Why did you write the book? Who really wrote the Book of Mormon, the Spalding Enigma?
Well, for me, I looked at the book that Howard and Wayne and another individual wrote that goes back into the late 70s, and I just felt that the story wasn't complete yet. And so I went to Wayne and Howard in the early 90s and I said, guys, I think we need to do another book, and we really need to research, did Spalding really have a connection to the Book of Mormon? And so in 1993, we started it up again.
With me, it was more of a combination of factors involved that got everything going here. One was having a family member involved and mixed up in this. And naturally, that's sparked a lot of our curiosity. We kept winding up and focusing on was the decade of the 1820s, from starting by say 1820 through up through 1830.
The histories, the personal histories of Sidney Rigdon and Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith, they are so vague for that same time period. It really made us wonder, what was the church hiding? Because every official and even unofficial biography that we found on these three gentlemen, either they started out as adults, or they went into great detail on their childhoods, but then lo and behold, just like Wayne said, as soon as it got into the 1820s, well, he was here, and then several years later he was there, or this guy was preaching here and he was over there, but nothing of substance.
What else is interesting about this was the trips that obviously Oliver Cowdery was making, coming back down to visit his second cousin Joseph Smith.
And how the church, for their part, said that Oliver Cowdery didn't show up visiting the Smiths until 2 full years later than when he really did.
So let me just back up and ask you, how was Spalding connected with the Book of Mormon?
Eyewitness accounts and what has come down to us. But Thomas Spalding himself is, you have to understand, he was the background too. A Congregationalist minister and Revolutionary War veteran, with an incredible imagination, with the background of being a Dartmouth College graduate. So you start adding all these factors up, the picture as you go, it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer.
Spalding, throughout his entire lifetime, had tried a wide variety of businesses, and either because of ill health or poor planning, or in the case of his land speculation, the War of 1812 breaking out, the poor guy failed at every one of these different business ventures until he could see that his health was failing, and he wanted to leave some kind of financial legacy for his family. I mean, they were destitute. And so he turned to writing. His education and his background experiences, and he also had kind of an interest in the American Indians, and the area where he lived, there were these ancient Indian burial mounds and everything. And so when he started writing, he incorporated that local history into his writings, and over his lifetime, he came up with many writings, as the various witnesses and Conneaut and his own family members would attest. He came up with many writings, poems, short stories, and finally a pair of manuscripts. The first one, which was called Manuscript Story, which he got into about 130 pages worth, but he could see that it just wasn't really going anywhere, so he eventually dropped that and turned to his second manuscript, Manuscript Found. And in there, he directly talks about the Indian burial mounds.
He talks about the burial mounds and everything, but also he changed his style to the biblical writing of Elizabethan English.
Right. And he one of his favorite phrases was "come to pass," and he used it so much that he was nicknamed by his family and friends Old Come to Pass.
How is that connected with the Book of Mormon? Okay, you're telling us about Solomon Spalding.
He wrote this, as I said, to provide a legacy, a financial legacy for his family. And so he contacted several different publishers in Pittsburgh. And finally, the one publisher, the brothers Patterson, said, yes, we will print your book if you can come up with the necessary, I guess you would call it front money or whatever, to start the publishing process. Unfortunately, Spalding died before he was able to come up with that money. Now, in Pittsburgh at that time was a man by the name of Sidney Rigdon. And he had just a fanatical interest in ancient histories. And from multiple witness testimony, we know that Spalding, like I said, turned in his manuscript to the Patterson print shop. But we also have from witness testimony Rigdon hanging around that same publishing house. And he had a friend there by the name of Lambden who gave him inside access to the publishing house. And it is our belief that Sidney Rigdon, at one time, whether either before Spalding passed away or not, he got a hold of Spalding's manuscript and became extremely interested in it. And over the course of years, got together with Oliver Cowdery, who then brought him to his cousin Joseph Smith. And then the three of them, over a period of about 3 or 4 years, basically edited and added things to Spalding's manuscript until it turned into what we now know as the Book of Mormon.
What is your most compelling evidence?
Something that is very key to the whole variety of claims which we have come to call the Spalding authorship claims. Something that's very important is Sidney Rigdon's connection to Spalding, because for the 176 years that the Mormon Church has been in existence, they have always maintained that Sidney Rigdon was never in Pittsburgh until about 4 years after Spalding died. And so if that was indeed the case, how could Sidney Rigdon have ever known about Spalding's manuscript? And if he never knew about Spalding's manuscript, end of story. There's no connection. There's no way that Rigdon could have acquired Spalding's manuscript. End of story. Well, in 1995, we came up with an incredible discovery, and it was in the form of a newspaper called the Commonwealth.
It's a public service.
And lo and behold, in the list, we find the name of none other than Sidney Rigdon.
Yeah, we have it highlighted.
And what makes it even more important is the fact that this was in 1816 and well before Spalding passed away.
And well before 1822.
The significance of that is that there were multiple witnesses who testified to the fact that Sidney Rigdon had been in Pittsburgh and that he knew Spalding. In fact, Spalding and his wife, as early as 1814, more than 2 years before Spalding died, accused Sidney Rigdon of taking Spalding's manuscript. Well, the Mormon Church, in addition to denying that Sidney Rigdon had been in Pittsburgh while Spalding was alive, said that all of the witness testimonies were just vague and erroneous reminiscences. Well, one of them, by the name of Rebecca Eichbaum, she was the wife of the Pittsburgh postmaster.
Yeah.
And she claimed that she saw Rigdon and Spalding and others on a fairly regular basis. And of course, the Mormons attacked her testimony, saying that she was an old woman, and so her memories were faulty at best. Well, with this and several others, we are able to conclusively prove that Rigdon in fact was in Pittsburgh not only before 1820, but also more than early enough to have known Spalding and to have acquired his manuscript. We have multiple witnesses who state that Solomon Spalding wrote his manuscript found, not manuscript story, but manuscript found was written on detached sheets of foolscap paper. Well, a few months ago, BYU University undertook a review of our book. They devoted nearly 130 pages to the review. And the review was written mainly by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Roper. And he tried to dismiss the use of the foolscap paper, saying that it was just, common in use. And while in a sense he was correct, yes, it was commonly used, the thing is, paper wasn't like paper is today. You say paper and it can mean anything. Back then people were very specific. If somebody said foolscap, it was foolscap sized paper, not the paper that Spalding used for manuscript story. If they meant a smaller sized piece of paper, they would say foolscap quarto or quarto cap. So Mr. Roper, at the very least, is making a major misstatement when he says that this was a common type of paper. If it was common type, the witnesses that we have, including Mr. Miller and Mr. McKee, would have said, we saw Spalding writing on quarto type or folio type or whatever. But they didn't. They said, we saw Spalding, and they mean multiple times they saw Spalding writing on foolscap paper. Well, the significance of this can't be understated because it proves that there were multiple manuscripts and not just one single manuscript, as the Mormons point out.
What are you, Art Vanek and Wayne Cowdery, and your third author, Howard Davis, trying to accomplish with this book?
Well, I would say it's been a long, hard road, as I said before, but we're trying to get at the truth and we're trying to make it available more publicly to the masses. Because unfortunately, over the last 150 years, Mormonism is growing, and the people really need to know what they're dealing with.
Yeah, we want to provide the information that we have in here. It's our goal to provide people with a very valuable and strong resource. Because the Mormons are very good at putting forth their message. They're trying to say that their book, the Book of Mormon, is another testament of Jesus Christ. We're saying, no, it is a plagiarism of a manuscript that was written by a man who was trying to provide a financial legacy for his family before he died. A man who wrote this manuscript to be nothing more than a romantic history of the American Indians. He did not mean it to be plagiarized, transformed, edited into some sort of false religion, which is what has happened to his book. What we care about is, did Spalding write a manuscript? And if he did, was it used by Sidney Rigdon, Oliver Cowdery, and Joseph Smith to turn it into what we now know as the Book of Mormon? And if so, How can we show it? Now, if it can be proved, and we believe it has been, then as many Mormon apologists and leaders have said over the years, the Mormon faith stands or falls on the Book of Mormon. And they're going all the way back to Parley Pratt throwing down the challenge, who was one of the earliest leaders in the church. They said, if you have evidence, show it to us. And we will look at it. Well, we have shown the evidence, and so far, very few have looked at it.